Welcome back to Just Talking because we have a great guest for us today. We have Keydi Osorio, who's a student at UW Parkside. Keydi, nice to see you today.
Nice to see you, Jason. Thank you so much for having me here. I genuinely appreciate it.
Well, the reason I brought you on here is, well, and you are also a past Mahone College Award recipient, so
Yeah, that's
congratulations on
thank you
that.
so much. Thank you.
And the reason I brought you on is we want to talk about the DACA student and the DACA program.
Right.
Now, are you currently a DACA student?
Yes, so I am a DACA student. I am 20 years old to give you a bit of perspective because DACA students range in age. A lot of the time, the student part tends to be a misconception of, oh, they have to be a student in college. A lot of them might be in high school, college, or even parents. So that is something I did want to point out.
Well, those who don't know what a DACA student is, first, what does it stand for and what is the DACA student or DACA program?
Yeah. So DACA stands for Deferred Action of Childhood Arrivals. It is a program it is actually an executive order put in place through the Obama administration. That's why they're called DACA students. However, you might have heard them be called dreamers. So I can give you a background about that. So dreamers comes from a legislation that they wanted to put in place called the Dream Act. The Dream Act, DREAM stands for Development, Relief, and Education for Alien Minors. However, the DREAM Act did not pass. The legislation itself was meant to find and give a path to citizenship for these students who met the requirements. However, since it got shut down, it didn't move forward until the Obama administration when they put the executive order called DACA, and people thought of DACA as the same legislation as Dream Act. So they stuck with the name Dreamers for these students. However, yes, we're called Dreamers, but Dream Act and DACA are not the same thing. DACA is an executive order, meaning that the next president, after the Obama administration, can take it down. Um, which did currently happen, but it didn't go through. DACA is still in place. That is why it's always recommended for these students to just keep their eyes out, because being a DACA student is really risky. And a lot of our decisions as students, they're very calculated because we have to know that we're not here permanently. We don't have the decision. So we have to be ready to be deported, unfortunately, if that were to be the case.
If it would have gone through and the DACA program would have been eliminated, would you have to be deported?
And deported in effect, I would be considered undocumented again, meaning that I would have to be in the shadows, hidden away from the public, because I don't have the right to work legally if I am undocumented.
Well, what does it take for you to get working legally?
To work legally, you have to, so that is where DACA comes in. DACA came in to provide work permits for these students who met the requirement of, here are the requirements, let me tell you. To be a DACA student, you cannot have criminal record even to be eligible to apply. You cannot have a misdemeanor, maybe the tiniest little like misdemeanor, but even then, even a speeding ticket is a bit terrifying because that can stop you from applying to be eligible. That is why it's recommended that if you're going to be a DACA student, you have to have a clean record. You have to be a good citizen. And then you have to actually pay taxes. You have to contribute to taxes. You have to pay a fee to be a DACA student. And that fee is every 2 years. Technically, it's every year because you have to start your application a year before your actual date of expiration happens. As a DACA student, you get a working permit. That working permit allows you to get a social security. However, that does not mean you're a U.S. citizen. That does not mean you're going to be eligible for a U.S. citizenship because you are given the opportunity to work here legally, but there's no next step. There's nothing else to move forward with it. That is the difference between the DREAM Act, which I mentioned earlier. The DREAM Act was meant to create a path for citizenship. For DACA students, the only way to actually look into residency and citizenship, you have to meet other requirements to put you in a different level and immigration. There are sometimes things as amnesty or being able to be a refugee. You have to prove that the where you are living or the country that you live in, or there's any gang violence, anything that can be a threat to your life. And that is a way for residency, but that doesn't mean that you actually could be a citizenship. Yes, you're eligible to apply, but that does not mean that it's given to you. So, mhm.
Because it seems like it would be a no-brainer to have this path to U.S. citizenship.
Right.
Because to me, that why would someone vote against that?
You know what? A lot of it comes from miscommunication, misunderstanding. People think that, oh, if you allow DACA students to be citizens, that means open borders. No, no, it's not, because we have never had open borders technically. You can think back to the 1700s. I cannot give you an exact date right now. But in the 1700s, a lot of the individuals that would come into this country came from Europe, and they came here to work. And the crazy thing was that when they landed here, they would be given US citizenship so they can work and build the communities up. So to me, it's kind of funny to think that people correlate DACA to open boards. No, it's not the same thing. I think being a DACA student, you have more restrictions. So these are kids, these are students, these are parents that are doing things. They're abiding the law. And like you said, it should be no-brainer, but there are things that are miscommunicated. And if I can bring this to your attention, is that a lot of these individuals still correlate the DREAM Act to DACA, so people don't think there's an issue, because a lot of these DACA students are still nervous to speak about being a DACA student, because they think, oh, are they going to think I'm undocumented? Are they going to think that I am not working here legally? They're going to have questions. And a lot of these students were afraid. They came from fear. And once they became DACA student, it was a little bit uneasy to fit into the community and go to college, because as a DACA student, you cannot apply to FAFSA. You cannot get certain loans because you are not a US citizen. That is why a lot of these DACA students are scared to go to college, because they can't afford it.
Does the system frustrate you?
I can tell you, yeah, the system frustrates me, but that is why I want to have this platform. You know, thank you for the opportunity to help me bring attention to this, because it is something that is still happening. I can tell you from personal experience, I have seen people tell me, I don't think it's an issue. You're the only other DACA student I've ever heard of. And to me, it's like, just because you haven't heard of another DACA student like me and your history, it doesn't mean it's not an issue. And to me, it is important to bring bring DACA to any media, to any platform, because the more we are just knowledgeable about the situation, the more we'll be able to have a conversation to contribute to an actual solution that is needed.
But you probably have experienced other families or other individuals that aren't as vocal as you. How are they dealing with this?
A lot of them are trying their best by contributing to local organizations. There is one called, like, for example, for Wisconsin themselves, they have Dreamers of Wisconsin, and they try their best to fundraise scholarships for students that are in need of tuition. And here's the thing, when it comes to tuition and scholarships, a majority of the scholarships being given at this moment do not apply for DACA students, because they are not US citizens or residents. So that means that a lot of these students can't apply for a lot of scholarships. And the few scholarships that are out there, yes, they're for DACA students and undocumented students, but it's a needle in a haystack. There's like thousands of DACA students applying for one scholarship. And that is another reason why I do want to bring out more attention to this cause.
Well, it seems like you have a lot of knowledge of it, and if you do make that conversation, if you do end up going to the Oval Office, talking to the Commander-in-Chief, what if he does say, though, we're eliminating DACA program, you're undocumented, get out of my country? What would be your response?
if you were to say that, I would say, well, I'm going to stick around. There's, many more individuals like me that will fight for this cause. And if DACA gets taken away, that's fine, because we'll fight something to actually be put in place other than DACA that can provide path for citizenship, that can provide at least a benefit for these students to continue their education, because these students want to be bettering the communities. A lot of these students are just like me, and if they're just like me, they mean that they genuinely care about those around them, and they're very, very, if I could say the least, they're very determined to make change happen. So yes, being an undocumented student will probably bring fear, but fear really does ignite courage, and that is something that these students have.
All right, excellent. Well, once again, Katie, you just are a very smart person, and
Thank you.
we just support you in the DACA program. And thank you so much for talking.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.